Everybody's got a price, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a pod, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price.
What's up, everybody? It's Marcus D'Angelo. We are back for another episode of Everybody's Got a Pod. And of course, I could never do it without the man himself, WWE Hall of Famer, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Ted, what's going on, my friend?
Hey, buddy, it's you, man. I'm fired up, ready to. I'm ready to punch somebody out.
Well, I'm glad I'm not present with you. We'll do this over the internet. I know you've got some stuff going on, but the really positive thing is that we're turning the clock back for our listeners on something pretty positive, a really fun time in your career, and a time when I believe you've told me before you felt like you were really kind of at your peak or reaching your peak as a professional wrestler 35 years ago, 1989. And I know that sentiment was echoed by Meltzer during this period, who has gone on record on a few occasions in the Observer during this period to say that he thinks you're one of the best workers in the world. So it's fun to look back at these days and what was going on in the WWF. But before we get into SummerSlam 89, Ted, I did want to bring up something that was a little bit sad that happened recently. You know, we spoke, a couple of weeks ago about the passing of Sika, one half of the Wild Samoans. Yeah. And now, unfortunately, Ted, his tag team partner also passed away last week as we're recording this. Afa passed away.
Oh, yes. My gosh.
Yes. So, both of the Wild Samoans.
Just for all the fans that are watching this is the first time hearing of this. And it's like, wow, that's a shocker. I mean, I can still remember when they first showed up, and I'm trying to think of where I was the first time I saw them. I can't remember where it was, but I mean, oh my gosh, they were so impressive. I mean, and they were literally scary. You talk about one of the greatest tag teams, and believable. Oh my gosh, believable all day long, and that's one of the things that I've always tried to stress, and that's another thing that aggravates me about any indie wrestling I see today. The attitude is kind of like, these people already know that it's not real. So, but my attitude was, okay, all these people think it's not real, but I'm going to do the best I can to make them believe my match.
Yes.
Where they walk away and go, you know what, those first couple matches, they were phony. But man, that DiBiase and that other guy, they were going for it.
The Wild Samoans really embodied that mentality of like, okay, these guys seem like they're crazy, and they would eat your face, if you got into a fight with them, and that happened to be true in some cases, I guess. But man, what a loss to the wrestling world, both Afa and Sika, the Wild Samoans. What a shame. So rest in peace to Afa.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Ted, let's get into our coverage of SummerSlam 1989. We've got some great stuff to go over here. We'll try to get through all of it. So it's announced in May that Dusty Rhodes is making the jump to the WWF, and we'll cover that in a minute. But first, in the 6'5" Observer, it's also reported that Barry Windham is going to be making the jump to the WWF. Ted, what do you think of Barry Windham, and did you see big things for a talent like him in the WWF here on the biggest stage in wrestling?
I thought Barry was a good worker. Again, he's another kid who was raised in the wrestling business. His dad was Blackjack Mulligan.
Yeah.
And Blackjack was, you talk about he was. He was a pretty good worker too, but he was when he had to be, he could be as real as you wanted him to be.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of those guys you want with you if you could only walk down a dark alley with one friend. But Barry, I wasn't around Barry a lot. What I saw of him, I admired. I thought he was a good worker, and I think he and my partner were tagged up for a while.
Yes, during Barry's first run.
Yeah, him and Mike Rotunda were tag team partners for a while, and I mean they were gonna. And of course, I thought the world of Mike. Thought the world of my partner.
And, I'm glad you brought that up because it's kind of going to lead into my next point about Barry. So he had already been with the WWF prior in the US Express with Mike Rotunda, and now he's coming in with the Widowmaker gimmick, and they are not acknowledging him as Barry Windham. And I think Vince even calls him an upstart whenever he comes into wrestling. For frame of reference, Barry's been wrestling for years and years at this point. So they don't acknowledge his past at all, which is kind of a weird thing, but they bring him in as the Widowmaker. Ted, what do you think about this when it comes to like kind of repackaging somebody and pretending like, oh, this guy's brand new to wrestling, even though he's got a great lineage? He was part of the Four Horsemen.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think it's kind of like I started wrestling in 1975. And of course, and just I wrestled as Ted DiBiase, my real name. I wasn't a character or anything like that. And, but then, when I went up to the WWE, all of a sudden, it's like, okay, Vince was creating these characters. And of course, my character was a villain, almost like the Ebenezer Scrooge of wrestling. And my attitude toward was that is okay. This is where we're going. That's okay. But I still went by my real name, Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man. Vince might have, if he thought about it, he might have dropped Ted DiBiase and just $1 Million Man because merchandise and all that stuff. I mean, he can't,
He can't own your name.
He owns the $1 Million Man, but he can't own my name.
Right.
So.
Yeah, things worked out really fortunately for you, and that does make me wonder, Ted, if you had come in the door and he was calling you an upstart and stuff like that, and acting like you were just this guy who's brand new to wrestling, is that like, are you like, okay, well, I'm playing a role here, or would you have been like, hey man, I've got a pretty well established lineage here in wrestling?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that I would have spoken up about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was just, maybe, I guess Barry was going to do whatever he had to do to get the job.
Probably so.
And you bringing this up, it's like, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. It's like, it's some of the little nuances that you pick up on whenever I'm doing like the research for this. And Meltzer mentioned it in the Observer back in '89. Like Vince called Barry Windham an upstart. He was in the Four Horsemen. Like fans knew and loved him. Like it's more cool to me to have Barry Windham come in and say like
Four Horsemen weren't part of Vince's show.
Right. But they are a big part of
it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't think anybody ever. I had been to New York once before. Asked Ted DiBiase when Vince McMahon Sr. was still alive.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I wasn't brand new to the fans in that area.
Yeah.
So maybe that had, Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man. I don't know.
Yeah, just a really strange thing. And, he would do it later with Ricky Steamboat whenever Ricky would come back as the Dragon, where he wouldn't call him Ricky Steamboat at all.
Yeah.
So just, I don't know, kind of a strange, I guess, this was the era when I think Vince was starting to think more and more about owning the rights to everything that went on his TV.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So guys like you and Jake and Jim Duggan came in probably at just the right time for your careers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Last thing about Barry before we move on, he is this guy. He's got this great look. He's big. He can work pretty good on the mic. Like he's got pretty much everything that you'd want in a wrestler, but he had a lot of difficulty getting over in the WWF. where the Widowmaker didn't work out, of course, and before he was with the U.S. Express. But on paper, you look at this guy and like, well, that guy's a star. What do you think Barry was lacking that held him down?
Marcus, I couldn't really tell you because I never watched him enough. I think I may have seen him. Like Mike may have showed me like a tape or something of them as a tag team. I never saw them at all when they were a tag team.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. That's just, I don't have any idea. I mean, it's kind of like mechanically he was good. I don't know. It's kind of like he was good. There was no doubt that he was good. My partner, Mike, was good. The thing about is kind of like charisma. If you don't have it, if you don't have charisma, then you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
But then there's different levels of charisma. So I don't know.
Yeah, Ted, I think maybe the argument could be made that really all that was missing for Barry Windham was the right opportunities, because you take a look at that guy, and again, it seems like he's got all of it, including the lineage in wrestling. So, yeah, I don't know, kind of weird that he would go to the biggest stage in wrestling and not have the kind of success he would enjoy elsewhere.
Yeah, and I can't answer that question for you. I mean, it's like I thought he was good. It's kind of like I thought he was a good worker, but I didn't. I never saw enough of him to say, oh my gosh, they need to. They need to make him the champion or anything like that. I just, my knowledge of that, you'd probably you'd get a better read on Barry from my partner, Mike Rotunda.
Yes.
So anyway.
Well, Ted, you're going to get a sudden change in dance partner again here at the start of the summer in '89. As a reminder, you entered a rivalry with Jake Roberts after WrestleMania 5, but he's out for months due to neck surgery. So Vince is going to bring back Roddy Piper, which we discussed, and you're going to work with him for a while. But it is somewhat short-lived. Here's the report from the Observer. Well, Roddy Piper's 10-day tour of the WWF wound up being a 3-day tour. I don't know any details of what wound up happening, except that Piper's last match that I know of with Titan was last Sunday night in Sacramento, and that Jimmy Snuka replaced Roddy Piper, who replaced Jake Roberts, at all the shows this week against Ted DiBiase, with Ted once again playing Jobber for the Stars. So, Ted, I know that comment there at the end probably comes off as abrasive.
Is that what he said?
That's what Meltzer said. But let me give some context before you respond to it, okay? So I wanted to include that because of the way that he framed it there. I don't think he was saying that to be disrespectful to you. I think, as I've mentioned before here, he considers you one of the best workers in the world at this time. But things have changed for you a bit in the WWF, and you're doing a lot of jobs to guys that Vince seems to favor as babyfaces. So I think that's the context of it, but I will allow you to respond to that notion.
Well, yeah, okay. And if you look at it, I guess from maybe Vince's point of view, what better way to get a new babyface over than to put him with one of your top heels to get him to win?
Yes.
And I really think that's more of what that was. And I don't think it's kind of like when I came in, the push I got was one of the biggest pushes they ever did. I mean, the $1 Million Man stuff, it went on and it went on and it went on, but then, you can't stay on the top river, especially if you're a heel.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a babyface, if you're Hulk Hogan or whoever that guy is, and even that, it's like you got to change things up. And I think that more than anything, it was like, I wasn't at the bottom of the card. When I was wrestling all these other guys, it's not the main event, but it's not the opening or second or third match either.
Right.
It's a significant match. So I think more than anything, that was, and that's, hey, I was a heel. And the other thing about that is, as long as I have the ability to make the people hate me, I don't care if I'm on the first or second match, as long as I can be that heel and get those people where I want them, I'm happy. But of course, if I'd have been put down on them, I was never the curtain jerker.
No.
The first match, second match, I was never put in a position like that, and I wouldn't. That's when I would have gone to Vince and go, "What are you doing?"
You were always figured in, and
That's it.
To me, more than anything, it feels like you're almost you're in a weird kind of holding pattern right now as you wait for Jake Roberts to get healthy again after his surgery, because everybody sees money in that angle. I think at this point, you guys have already done that angle where he's stuffing, or he steals the money from Virgil, and then you attack him and you stuff the money in his mouth. You guys have done that part already. And then Jake gets hurt, and now it's like, oh shit, now what do we do?
Yeah.
So they're trying out some other stuff with you. So you weren't too concerned. You knew that the pendulum was eventually going to swing back the other way just because of your skills as a heel.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on to Dusty Rhodes, and you're going to play a big role in this. But first, here's what Meltzer had to say about him coming in. The shockwaves have been pretty strong this past week when the word got out of the newest acquisition of Titan Sports, none other than Dusty Rhodes. There is no word on what role Rhodes will play with Titan upon his planned arrival, tentatively scheduled for August, but the announcement within Titan got over like a lead balloon among several of the Titan wrestlers. So that August guess is wrong. He's actually going to come in here really fast. But Ted, do you remember any of the guys like Arn Anderson or Tully Blanchard or other former JCP guys having an issue with Dusty coming to the WWF?
Well, and again, remember this: Dusty had also been a booker.
Yes.
In Charlotte. And Charlotte was, I think, wasn't Charlotte maybe Florida too?
Yeah, so he had office roles in Charlotte and Florida.
And so being a booker, you can make enemies pretty quick if you don't get booked the way if he doesn't book you the way you think you should be booked. Anyway, I never had a problem with Dusty. I mean, the first time I saw Dusty, I was still playing football, West Texas State. He and Dick Murdoch had been a tag team, and they had been a tag team like I think they went over to Australia or something, whatever. But I think they called them the Outlaws. And oh my gosh, were they good together?
What a pair!
The first time I met Dusty was in Dick's house in Amarillo, Texas, and then when and I don't know what Vince's deal was, but they put Dusty in this ridiculous looking outfit. I mean, you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
And what did they call him?
Well, so they kept his American Dream moniker.
Yeah.
Right. But now it's like the American Dream, it's they've got him doing vignettes, delivering pizza and unclogging a toilet and all that stuff to introduce his character as this common man who's willing to do any job.
Yeah.
And then he comes in wearing polka dots and, it on the surface kind of seems like they buried him.
But I'm going to tell you what, and it's to Dusty's credit. Dusty said, okay, I'm going to take this ball and run with it. And he did.
Yes.
He got over. I mean, when you can work, you know how to get over. And so, yeah. And I remember, he and I had some good matches.
Yeah, I don't think you can hold down a talent like Dusty Rhodes, no matter what you give him. But I will say, it's like, this is a guy that you've seen before. You've actually worked with him prior in your career. I want to say you'd like stop by Mid-South and work with you guys. And I know if there's a match out there. So a guy that and have all this respect for, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
However, now you're seeing these vignettes of this guy that I heard Jake say once that the only time he ever got nervous in the ring was the first time he stepped in the ring with Dusty Rhodes. Like, so to say that this guy is a big star and a big deal, even among the boys, he's like a Harley race. It's like all the boys love and respect him. And he's coming in and he's unclogging a toilet on national television during one of his vignettes.
Yeah.
I mean, Ted, when you see that, is it like, what are they doing, or did you think it was good stuff?
Well, I don't recall seeing any of the vignettes because it's kind of like, it's kind of like we would do all the TVs, and it's very rare that I went back and just let me go watch myself.
Oh yeah, okay. So you never saw them.
So I mean, I didn't see that vignette, no, but I knew that they had done those things with him.
Hearing about it now and thinking back on it now, do you feel like it's disrespectful to a talent like Dusty to put him in that position, or like, hey, look, it's showbiz?
You know what? I don't know if Vince did that, to try and humiliate him, but Vince also knows that he got over. And the other thing you got to remember about Vince was never a wrestler. Vince's gift was marketing. And now he's marketing all of these characters, and he's marketing them to a younger audience. He's trying to sell video games, action figures, and all that merchandise.
And, I think that a lot of fans view this whole, common man thing with him unclogging toilets and stuff as like a very indefensible thing. And I've never defended it before, but I will go to bat for Vince McMahon a little bit here. To your point, he was more of a marketer than he was a wrestling guy. So he's not looking at Dusty Rhodes saying like, boy, what a great legacy this man has in wrestling. He's looking at him saying, okay, how can I entertain people with this guy to introduce him to the audience? So that's what he was trying to do.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't know, it's kind of like it may have been Vince's way, I don't know, of testing Dusty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as these vignettes are airing, you're the one to work with Dusty on house shows beginning on May 29th. So Meltzer was a little bit off guessing that he was going to debut in August, because he's debuting right away here. It's May 29th. And presumably you're in this position to get Dusty ready for his debut on TV. But here's what's interesting. You mentioned that maybe Vince was testing Dusty. At a Superstars taping on June 6th, you'll defeat Dusty in a dark match, which was eventually released years and years later on a WWE unreleased DVD. What's significant about this is that throughout the entire run of you guys doing these house shows, he's beating you at all of them. But then it's kind of like his first time at TV, so to speak, and he does the job for you. And the rumor surrounding that match in particular was that WWF officials wanted you to go over against Dusty to see if he was willing to do business. And so it's an interesting rumor. I'm not sure if you heard any of the scuttlebutt, but what do you think?
Yeah, it very well could have been a test. Like they're it's like they're putting me over to see how Dusty's going to react.
To your knowledge, did Dusty have a reputation for not wanting to do the job for people?
Oh no, I mean, but Dusty was always all business, and it's kind of like, he was, he came from the old school for sure. Like I said, he and Dick Murdoch were one of the, you talk about tag team. Oh my gosh. I think they called them the Outlaws. And you might look that up.
They're a hell of a pairing. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
And I know without even having to see it in research, because it didn't exist in research, I know definitively that guys like Tully and Arn had issues with Dusty. Tully at one point said that Dusty should book Dusty against Dusty so Dusty could go over against Dusty, just because like Dusty was booking himself in JCP and he was winning a lot. And so like I think that guys like Arn and Tully were starting to get really frustrated with that scene, but now here he is. So it kind of makes sense that maybe Titan would say, like,
and
okay,
I could see that, but like that was. I remember because Dusty tried real hard to get me to Charlotte, and I never went to Charlotte.
right.
And it wasn't, it wasn't because I didn't want to go to Charlotte. I just, I was doing other things, and and I guess obviously Arn and Tully. I mean, Tully grew up in the business just like I did, and was could see things for what they were, and get frustrated with it. Yeah, I can see that.
And look, it's wrestling too. It's a very competitive business. So like, as if somebody else is winning all the time, guys who are lower on the card are not getting the push that they think they deserve. Say like, why is that guy winning all the time? So it's just the nature of wrestling.
Yeah, in the old days, if you didn't like the way you were getting booked, all you had to do was give the promoter a 2-week notice, and 2 weeks you were gone, and you go to another territory where nobody knows you. And and of course that by this time all of that's going by the wayside, because now eventually wrestling is going, WWE wrestling is going to be not only nationwide but worldwide.
And Ted, you're going to be working with Dusty here on the house show loop for 2 straight months. The only matches that you have are against Dusty Rhodes for 2 months here with the WWF. And at this time, it makes me wonder, Dusty, he's getting a little bit older at this time. Rumor has it that he's been telling everybody during this period that this is his final year as an active wrestler, which of course wouldn't end up being true. But did he feel like the Dusty Rhodes of old, or did you feel like maybe he'd lost a little step here or there?
Nah, he was good as he always was.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's excellent, because he was great, to be sure. And again, it's when your ring work starts to lack, you can make up for it with some great charisma, and he had that in spades.
Absolutely.
Well, here's what's interesting, Ted. After 2 months of you working with Dusty, he makes his debut, but it's not with you. He'll immediately begin a program with the Big Boss Man instead. So again, it's like this is still fresh to the audience. It's his TV debut. Like the at-home audience, by and large, has not seen Dusty work. So in theory, they could have said, okay, Dusty and Ted, they've been working together. They've developed chemistry. Why not put them together? I mean, would you say that you were disappointed not to get that spot with Dusty headed into SummerSlam?
I don't think I had any problem with any of it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, I had a different attitude than a lot of guys. I mean, it's kind of like, the the boss is going to do with you what he wants to do. And here's the other thing I knew. It's kind of like, if I have a legitimate complaint, okay. But even if I don't have a legitimate complaint, then if I complain to Vince and he says, no, there's the door, go somewhere else.
That's the risk you run.
And there wasn't anywhere else to go.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're in an independent contractor, you're kind of at the whim or the will of the promoter. So it is what it is. Also, it's, I guess, when I'm reading this, the fan in me is like, why wouldn't they put Ted with Dusty at SummerSlam? It's the second biggest show of the year. These two have chemistry. Like, why not put those two together? But when you start to think about it a little bit more logically, it's like that we know that we're working toward Ted and Jake and the rivalry that's eventually going to happen here at WrestleMania. So the idea of Dusty coming in, Dusty in theory would have to go over against you at SummerSlam.
And here, that's the other thing is why put Dusty with me in that pay-per-view that's going to be seen everywhere to get beat?
Right.
So
that's it. So he's not going to do the job. It's his debut. He's got to win. But then you need to look strong going into this thing with Jake. So that's As frustrating as it is, and it would have been cool to get that match in '89, it's like, well, it does make more sense to go the other way. So coming out of your program with Dusty, you're locking horns with Hillbilly Jim for some reason. Ted, what did you think about Hillbilly Jim as a man and as a worker?
He's a good guy. Good guy. He was good on the microphone, but very limited in the ring.
Mm-hmm. He was.
Those guys that Terry Funk would always tell me. He says, when you get with somebody like that, it's kind of like Junkyard Dog. Junkyard Dog was fantastic on the microphone, and the people loved him. He says, but you're going to have to put him in the middle of the ring and walk and work around him. What I did. And Hillbilly Jim was the same. He's limited. Here's this great big guy. What are you going to do with him? Well, you got to believe for believability's sake. The first thing you got to do is find a way to get him off his feet.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, that's.
Do you think there would have been more money in making Hillbilly Jim instead of giving him this kind of silly, goofy, fun, kid-oriented character? Do you think there would have been more money in making him like some big monster heel?
I think Vince is probably still thinking about merchandise.
Yeah,
merchandise. I mean, he's taken wrestling and made it family programming. And obviously, you got all these little kids that are out buying video games and action figures and stuff. They don't want to see their heroes get beat.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
And to your point, Hillbilly Jim was like on the cartoon and stuff for the kids. So I think that's one of those characters that Vince said, like, well, let's instead of turning him, he's a huge guy, but why don't we make him a friendly giant?
Yeah.
Well, Ted, let's get to SummerSlam. It's in East Rutherford, and I've become something of a Ted DiBiase expert since starting this podcast. And before I started the notes for this show, I was kind of racking my brain. I was like, who in the world did Ted wrestle at this event? So I'll pass it to you. 35 years ago, do you have any idea who you wrestled at SummerSlam '89, the year after you and Andre took on Hogan and Savage?
I don't have a clue.
There's a good reason that you don't have a clue, and a good reason that I didn't have a clue. After spending most of the summer working with Dusty Rhodes and then randomly working against Hillbilly Jim for a while, at the second biggest show of the year, you're in there with Jimmy Snuka with no build of any kind. And as a matter of fact, you and Snuka didn't work together at all in the lead up to this. Like I said, you're working with Dusty Rhodes and then Hillbilly Jim. So it's like, it's just a cold match. Out of nowhere. So, I mean, you main evented SummerSlam the year prior. Would you say that it's frustrating to get a cold match going into this? Or again, were you just like, hey, whatever, it's just the job I'm being asked to do?
Yeah. I mean, here's the bottom line. For all of us, you can complain, you can, but here's the deal. You're in an organization now. The territories have all gone away. You could throw a fit and quit and go somewhere else. Well, there was nowhere else to go.
Right.
And the more cooperative I am with them, in my opinion, the better they're going to treat me in the long run.
Absolutely. And there was one other option, a viable option, which would have been the NWA WCW at this time. However, you could go get that Turner money, but you're also running a risk of getting bad creative. You're no longer on the biggest stage in wrestling. Their marketing machine is nowhere close to what Vince's is. So to your point, it's like, hey, look, just take the damn money and do your job and do as well as you can, and the cream will rise to the top, right?
Yeah, exactly. You always gotta, it's kind of like you can't be on top forever as a heel. A heel has to, he eventually he gets to the top, but he's going to get knocked off. Well, then, he doesn't have to go to the bottom of the card, but now because they're always grooming a new heel for the champion.
Now, as a heel that's already been to kind of like the pinnacle in wrestling, what do you have to do to get back to the top of the card? Do you have to change anything about yourself or your presentation?
No. I mean, enough time goes by, and then, well, it's just kind of like then they when they made this, when I did the angle with Jake. Okay, so no, we weren't the main event, but we weren't at the bottom of the ladder either, were we?
No, a very strong angle.
A very strong angle. That's just it. It's like, your superhero, your Hulk Hogan he's there, and that's the guy you keep feeding fresh fish to, fresh heels, and they have their run with him, and they get beat, and they go back down, and they start working their way back up, and that's the deal. You don't go all the way to the bottom, but you know what I'm saying?
Yes, it does make sense.
Yeah, and back in the old territory days, if you were a heel like that, you go through all the baby faces and get to the main guy. Like in the Amarillo territory, it would be the Funks, and then once they beat you, well, then you got to go away for a while. I go to another territory, and then come back a year later or whatever, or 2 years later, and you're fresh again.
That makes perfect sense. Yes, and I think that the other path back to the main event for a heel, now that I'm sort of thinking this through, is that Hulk Hogan is going to be replaced by some other babyface, whether it be the Ultimate Warrior or Randy Savage, and then they're going to need somebody to work against. Well, why not bring the $1 Million Man back up? So it's and good points. Now, as far as yourself and Jimmy Snuka was concerned, did you feel like you two had some decent in-ring chemistry? What did you think of Snuka?
Oh yeah. I had no problem with Jimmy.
The main event has got Hogan and Beefcake teaming up to take on Savage and Zeus. Big Tony Lister is making some huge money and not doing a whole lot of anything by and large. And now he's got the main event spot at SummerSlam. Safe to assume a lot of the boys were not especially pleased with this.
I mean, it was. I'm sure there's several guys were not too crazy about it. I don't even think Hogan was so crazy about it, because I mean, it's kind of like, I just think I think Vince thought he could make anybody, but he got out of Lister what he could, but that wasn't much. I mean, there wasn't much to work with.
No, I know that he got put with like Dusty Wolf, an enhancement talent with the WWF, to kind of, get him to the buildings and probably teach him some stuff along the way and all that. But it's like, how do you take this guy who's an actor who's never stepped foot in a wrestling ring and say like, okay, we're going to teach you how to work a match in whatever, like a month?
Yeah.
I know that it was to promote their movie No Holds Barred, and that was really what this was about. So like, to that point, probably a good idea and good marketing. However, it's if I'm a veteran wrestler and I'm working,
well, you just told me why.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Why did they have the match? To promote the movie.
Exactly. But if I'm a 15-year veteran and I'm working, second, and I see that this actor's getting in there and working the main event and getting all that money, I don't know, I'd probably be a little bit pissed.
Brother,
that's wrestling, right?
You that's just wrestling. I mean, there's just going to be times when hey, I had been all the way to the top, and I was there a long time, and I went back down, and I mean, I didn't go down to the bottom, but I was always, let's put it this way, I was always in the group that were doing interviews.
Yes.
Okay, so if I was on a major show, I had done an interview for that match. I was never like the curtain jerker, and you understand that. That's wrestling. It's like, you keep feeding the guy at the top, your hero.
For you, when it comes to Tony Lister, it's kind of a unique situation because you came in the door for the WWF getting limousines and 5-star hotels and a stipend, etc. Would you say that you were happy for this guy? Who wouldn't take advantage of this deal, or was it different circumstances because you're an experienced wrestler and he's just an actor?
Well, I mean, it's like being the right guy, the right thing they're looking for at the right time. They were going to do this movie, and this guy fit the bill. So okay, but it's a one-off. What else did he do after that was over? You never heard about him again.
Yeah, he'd wind up at like Survivor Series that year on your team. As a matter of fact, we'll cover it later on this year. But that was about it. A very short-lived run.
Yeah.
Well, we're having a great run here on Everybody's Got a Pod. That's going to wrap us up for this week, talking about 1989. Dude, I love looking back to this period in your career. It's a really fascinating time. And we're going to get into Survivor Series probably on our next episode that we do about 89. So there will be plenty to cover by that time. In the meantime, folks, I want you to go check us out on YouTube. It's youtube.com/@everybody's-got-a-pod. Ted is there with some exclusive clips, and we've also got Hacksaw Jim Duggan over there for his podcast, The Hacksaw Hour. That is the only place where you can get that podcast. So make sure you get over there, get subscribed. It's youtube.com/@everybody's-got-a-pod. Check out OneTrueSportTV.com. We've got a bunch of tiers of membership over there. You want to become a traveling champion, though. It's only $39.99 per month, and you get all of these awesome perks, including Q&As live with some huge wrestling talent, bonus episodes. We just sent out a bunch of posters for people. They're incredible, which we'll show an image of here. There's so much more. You got to get over there. It's OneTrueSportTV.com and get the latest Ted DiBiase merch at OneTrueSport.com. Just released his Big Cheese shirt, his first ever shirt from his days in Mid-South. A beautiful shirt featuring him in Japan and way more. Plus, there's more coming. So get over there, OneTrueSport.com. Dad, as always, really fun to chat with you, and I look forward to doing it again next week.
Well, I enjoy it too, Marcus, and again, I just can't leave without reminding everybody that everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man.
We'll see you guys next time right here on Everybody's Got a Pod. $1 million dreams, tell them all good night. Everybody's got a pod, everybody's got